West Africa's regional bloc, ECOWAS, has deployed troops to Guinea-Bissau on Monday to help stabilize the country after a failed coup in February. The Guinea-Bissau Stabilization Support Mission comprises some 600 troops from Nigeria, Senegal, Ivory Coast and Ghana.
The mission's military chief says the force will cover the whole country. ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security says the mission will last 1 year and is renewable. President Umaro Embalo escaped a February coup attempt that left 11 people dead. ECOWAS decided the same week to send a stabilization force. The bloc had already deployed a force for stability and security in Guinea-Bissau after the April 2012 coup that overthrew Prime Minister Carlos Gomes Jr., who was the favorite to win the presidential election. The force of more than 1,000 soldiers and police officers left the country in September 2020 at the end of its mandate, having ensured the country's stability for 8 years.
Meanwhile, Burkina Faso's army has ordered civilians to evacuate 2 large military interest zones in its northern and southern eastern regions ahead of anticipated operations against insurgents. The announcement was made late on Monday, with few details about how long people will have to evacuate or where they should go. The announcement followed an attack in the north on June the 11th that killed over 100 people and displaced thousands more. A group of military officers overthrew the democratic government in January with pledges to improve security, but attacks have only multiplied. One of the military zones is a rural area of about 2,000 square kilometers bordering Mali in the northern province of Soum. Well, for some analysis, we're now joined by Dr. Lassane Ouedraogo, who's a communications scholar, Africanist and Theorist. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
My pleasure to be here with you again to discuss this matter.
The issues in Burkina Faso and Guinea-Bissau, different but perhaps similar in terms of some of the challenges that they're facing. Let's start with Guinea-Bissau. And do you have confidence that this ECOWAS force can make a difference with a problem that's been long-standing?
Well, the hope is that with the presence of ECOWAS military in Guinea, this might prevent other military officials who might be attempting to do any further coups to come to an agreement that coups are not the way forward. We have seen the entire West African region rocked with recent coups, a lot of coups, 3 successful coups in the span of less than a year. And the region cannot afford to go through another coup because that's like falling back behind for about 10 years in terms of democratic achievements. So ECOWAS is, in my mind, attempting desperately to make sure that is not happening there. And they certainly do have evidence that the failed coup might repeat again. And because oftentimes what we see is that there's a failed coup and then other militaries would try to do it again. This is what happened in Burkina Faso. Kabore arrested some military officers, accusing them of attempting a coup. And weeks later, the very people he sent to arrest these military were mounting another coup against him.
All right. So are these lessons learned from Burkina Faso, or could Burkina Faso have been preempted with the same kind of action that we're seeing now? And then, of course, we think about Mali. I mean, that's being run by military coup leaders.
Yeah, and the Mali case is just heartbreaking when we look at this beautiful country with a tremendous, strong culture, the music culture, very vibrant, and the military is coming in and mounting a first coup and putting in a civilian transitional government only to do a coup against that transitional government to take over and we now see what is going on there. The relationship with between Mali and the international community has gone into directions that were not previsible at all. Nobody could imagine that Mali would be where it is today in terms of its relations with its former allies, the former colonial power France, but also the regional bloc, including Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire, and who at some point actually did an embargo on Mali. So I think ECOWAS is proactively now seeking to make sure anywhere, any place in the region when there's a possibility of coup, they can work toward preventing it from happening. Because when it happens, there's no way to go back. Oftentimes, when military leaders take power, they're not ready to negotiate a short-term transition anymore. They're asking for 5 years, like in Mali, 3 years, like in Burkina, and so on. So the way forward is just to make sure to prevent it from happening. And if ECOWAS is moving into Guinea, it's possibly that they have evidence that the failed coup, is not entirely aborted.
Another sad common thread when we look at Mali, when we look at Burkina Faso, is the problem of insurgents. And now we see in Burkina Faso that they're trying to manage an insurgency there at this time. Tell us about this initiative of evacuating civilians. One would think that that is almost a huge warning for the insurgents, and all they do is retreat and come back later.
Definitely. I still question the intelligence around this communication, telling openly on national TV that the people from those regions have to evacuate without giving clear details on where they will be evacuating to, what are the modality of that evacuations, etc., etc. But I believe it's a very desperate move that President Ouedraogo and his junta are pulling here, because the Burkinabe people are known to be people who are not afraid to go onto the street and demand that President Ouedraogo step down. If nothing is done at this specific moment, that is going to happen. We're going to see in the news soon. The only way forward for Ouedraogo is to show that he's clearly moving forward in terms of securing the regions. Because he came to power, the argument that he advanced then was that the then President Kabore was not doing anything, that he's the right man, he's the man who can do the job. And at the beginning of the coup, he was supported by the populations. Everyone applauded because it was a desperate move. We needed to see someone doing something. And ever since he came, we have registered some of the largest loss of human life in the country in the hands of the terrorists, and it's expanding. And it seems to me that the tactic has changed. They are no longer, the terrorists, they are no longer attacking just our military. They are also attacking civilians who might be collaborating with the military, civilians who might be giving any information to the military. When the military retrieve, they're coming back to slaughter them. So perhaps asking them to evacuate or just leave the region is just a desperate move to tell them, we don't want to communicate with you. We don't want you to be between us and the insurgent groups. But the thing is that you don't know who is a terrorist. Unless you see them in the battlefield, you don't know them. So what evidence do we have that the people who will be moving around, going to other places, are not also terrorists? They might be hiding among the general population. So that is one of the fears that these kinds of military tactic might call for. But I still believe that beyond the communication that we've seen on TV, the military tactic might actually be different.
All right. I mean, you talked about loss of life. I mean, just last weekend, 89 people killed in, say, Tanga, and one of the worst massacres in the country's history. Does this point to a government's security forces that just can't cope? And I wonder if, isn't this a signal that the ECOWAS forces should be coming to assist there rather than spending time trying to prevent a coup?
Exactly, that would be a fair analysis because ECOWAS is not assisting Burkina Faso in terms of, say, military equipment or any other form of support that would go toward fighting against the insurgency. When ECOWAS delegate came to Burkina this past week, they came with grain. They came with which was perceived by the Burkinabe population as a very shameful move. We need weapons. We don't necessarily need bags of rice, and that was a loan from the government communication we all read and heard on national television. The ECOWAS bloc is loaning tons of grain to the Burkinabe government to support its internally displaced people who are now amounting to roughly 2 million people. But before that, there was a special military delegation of ECOWAS which came to Burkina to investigate the situation, to find out to what extent is the situation really bad. And what transpires from that investigation is that the Burkinabe government is not in control of at least 40% of the territory. And this is something we knew a long time ago. So one would think that ECOWAS would move on in terms of providing the Burkinabe government with perhaps military assistance or weapons. But ECOWAS seems to be more interested in organizing elections. Go on and organize your elections. We don't want militaries holding powers longer than necessary. But the fact of the matter is that I'm not in support of a military rule in any way. But today, we cannot afford to go toward elections simply because 40% of the country is not in our own control. So, and the only people who can work toward securing those, the 100% of the country, are the ones in power. All what we need to do now is to support them and help them see through this. Sandaogo is very much aware of what young military officers can do if he's not really moving in the right direction, because he was sitting there and he did something. He did a coup when he perceived that the government was not doing the right thing. And he does not like criticism, but criticism is coming from all over the place. It's coming from even people close to the junta, but also from political parties and civil society groups who are now saying that, okay, the reasons why we supported you in the first place is because we believe in you. We believe that you're the right man to clearly establish or re-establish the country in its perimeters. But time is passing and a lot of people are being slaughtered, and we're not seeing any clear way out.
All right,
so that's I believe this is a very desperate move that he is pulling right now.
All right, well, let's wait and see what happens in the coming days. But thank you so much indeed for joining us. Your thoughts and analysis greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much.
All right, so challenges there in Burkina Faso. a country that since 2015 has seen 2,000 people killed, 1.9 million people displaced. The government asking people in the north to evacuate so that they can try and deal with this insurgency. But as you heard from our analyst there, it sounds like a pretty desperate move for a government that's lost control of 40%